Hi everyone, this is my run on the event Lotsa Lore Chaos Challenge Quest, which is Strago's debut event Chaos Challenge. And like always, before going into the fight, I will be giving an overview of the fight as well as the party setup that I used. I will also put a link in the video description of the regular Chaos fight for those interested in that. As well as a timestamp of this fight in case you are interested in specific sections. You can just jump ahead. So going through this fight is just a single wave consisting a pair of behemoth type enemies called Fierce, and they are heavily resistant to ranged attacks, which isn't an issue for the Chaos Challenge because the synergy characters are magic based units anyway. So the Behemoths has two stances, so they start off the fight on all four legs, which is their quadrupedal stance, and later on in the fight they will then stand on two legs and go into their bipedal stance, which raises their attack but lowers their defense. Now throughout both stances, all of their attacks are pretty standard, except for two different attacks that you really need to take note of, and that is the unique mechanic of this chaos fight, which Strago is really built for, but I'll get into that later. So the first attack in the quadrupedal stance is an attack called Blaze Wave, and you can see when they are about to use this. If they are on all fours and they target all, it means they are about to use Blaze Wave. Now the attack itself is pretty not spectacular. It's just a group fire-based brave attack. However, this attack triggers a change in an aura, and after using Blaze Wave, the behemoth who used the attack will gain an aura, where you can see here it becomes resistant to ice, lightning, earth, and holy element, becomes resistant to magic, absorbs fire, wind, water, and dark, and also absorbs physical hits. And because they are already by default heavily range resistant, this actually puts them in a state where they are either resistant to attack types or absorbent to it, which makes brave shaving extremely difficult when they are in this state. And they will remain in this state for either one turn, so until their next turn, or if you manage to break them, in which case breaking them will also cancel this state. Now the danger here is that if you don't break them in time, they will then be able to amass some brave and then unleash this onto your party in the form of HP attack. Now it isn't too bad because Blaze Wave itself doesn't do too much damage, and if you debuff them, for example with Kefka, they don't get too much brave after using Blaze Wave. So even if you don't manage to break them on their next turn, they wouldn't do too much damage to your party members. And on the quadrupedal stance, they only have one form of HP attack, which is their standard melee HP attack in the form of Hurl. So as long as you can keep them pretty much brave shaven, then you don't have to worry too much about this. It becomes much more challenging when they go into their bipedal stance. So on their bipedal stance, they have a similar type of attack, but this time instead of a group brave attack, it's just a single target brave attack. Now this is actually, in my opinion, worse because since it's single target, you can't really tell when the boss will actually use this attack, because the boss also have other single target attacks obviously in his arsenal. And this attack is called Serra Force, which you can see over here. Compared to Blast Wave, Serra Force is also worse in terms of the aura. So after the boss uses Blaze Wave, the aura is blue in color, And after using Seraphos in the bipedal stance, the aura is whitish in color. You can see the actual aura around the boss. Now Seraphos is worse because in addition to being resistant to all forms of brave damage, so it doesn't matter what attack you do, the boss will resist the brave damage taken. The boss will also gain about 15,000 brave each time one of your party members get a turn, and this 15,000 brave is actually absorbed directly from your party member. Now you can imagine it's already very difficult to shave off the brave with the reduced brave damage from the aura, but on top of that the boss actually gains about 15,000 brave per character turn, and will likely lead to about 50,000 over brave by the time it gets its next turn, which will then result in an HP attack that will kill off your characters. So to get around Seraphos, you really need to be able to somehow break the boss while it's in this state. And similar to Blaze Wave, if you manage to break him, it breaks off the aura and he goes back to normal brave damage taken and without the brave absorb after that. So coming to the party members for this fight, for the Chaos Challenge, there's 4 synergy characters. Struggle is the featured character, and Struggle is really the best unit to get around the boss mechanics because he features instant break in his kit in the form of his LD, as well as his second skill if the target is at even brave amount. So being able to insta break the bosses will automatically remove them from both the Blaze Wave and the Seraphos aura. The other notable characters include Relm. So if you pair Relm with Odin Summon, whenever Relm uses Sketch Summon, the Sketch Summon ability has a 50% chance to also insta break the bosses, which will help against their Blaze Wave and Seraphos aura. Kefka can also help because his EX Havoc Wing also has a chance to insta break, although it's not at 100% insta break. But beyond that, Kefka also of course has both the valuable blind debuff as well as HP attack disable. So another way they can get around the Blaze Wave and Seraphos aura is if you are not able to break the bosses, you can, and you have Kefka built up, you can either inflict HP attack disable, so the bosses were not able to HP attack you, and after one turn their aura will dissipate. Or you can try to bypass this by inflicting blind on them. So both Relm and Kefka also has blind. However, blind is risky because it's only a 50% chance for the attack to miss, so it's rather RNG dependent. The Emperor can help, although not as good as the other synergy characters, and the Emperor helps in the form of his traps. So hopefully after going into the aura, if they are heavily trapped by the Emperor, the traps will trigger and hopefully shave enough brave or even break the bosses and bring the bosses out of their aura. However, it isn't as good because in the form of the aura, the bosses will resist the brave damage done by the traps, so the traps will not shave a significant amount of brave. Now, outside of the Chaos Challenge, for the regular Chaos, there are quite a few units who can help you bypass the Blaze Wave and Seraphos mechanic. So, firstly, the aura that the bosses will gain will only last for one turn. So if you have any way to disable the boss for one turn, so for example inflicting paralysis or terror by Elnarch, or HP attack disable from Arciela or Kefka, or even for example total blindness from Kimari, the boss will not able to HP attack you and then thereafter go back to the state without the aura, which will allow you to break them again. Otherwise, you can also consider using tank characters such as Bash. The single target HP attack the bosses have in Hurl and Slice are also physical attacks, so Galuf will also be able to dodge their single target HP attacks and land a counter attack after that. Beyond that, you can consider using evasion because none of their attacks are guaranteed to land, or of course characters with last stand, or for example Freya being able to endo last stand to your entire party is also another way to get around this. And lastly, you can even consider Beatrix for her one turn HP damage protection, which can also be considered to get around this attack. And of course, there's always the cheesiest way, which is to just use Ambident Lion to delete all the boss's turns, because if they can't use Blaze Wave or Seraphos, they will never go into their respective auras. Now the party I used consists of Relm, Emperor and Kefka, and the main reason for this is I decided not to invest in Struggle because I do not plan to use him for the long term anyway. I felt that Relm is overall a more versatile unit, and importantly she's also sort of like a budget unit because you only need her EX plus. She doesn't have an LD weapon at this stage of the game. So I used Relm, the Emperor and Kefka for this fight. And like I said earlier, because I'm using Relm, my summon of choice here is Odin, which will allow Relm a 50% chance to insta-break when she uses her sketch summon. So with that said, let's move on to the fight. I'll see you there. Okay, so starting the fight, the challenge with pairing Kefka together with the Emperor is managing debuffs. So the key to Emperor's DPS is to allow him to land all his trap debuffs through his EX and triggering them with his HP plus attack. So I start off the fight using his LD to gain his HP plus attack. And because you need to save some debuff slots for his traps, you do not want to enframe 6 debuffs with Kefka's LD. And in fact, in this fight, I try not to use his LD as much as possible. And there is a place that you can use them, which is during the summon phase, because the best way to maximize damage inside summon is to first have the Emperor use his EX to inflict 3 traps on the enemies, and then summoning thereafter, which will actually give you then a few turns for the Emperor to land his HP plus attack and triggering the 3 traps. And because the enemies are debuffed by 3 traps inside the summon phase, that is also the best time for you to use Kefka's LD skill just for the pure DPS inside summon. Importantly, right, with Relm, you really do not want the sketch debuff to fall off because it only has 2 turns, and you really want the turn manipulation potential that it provides her. I was somewhat conservative with the skills. You can see that I used HP plus attack with Kefka, and really with a fully maxed party, there's really no need for that with Kefka. I ended the fight with quite a lot of his skill users left, so you can just go to town. But again, while you are free to use his Light of Judgment and his Trying ability, it's best not to enframe the debuffs so that the Emperor can land some debuffs on his own. The goal really is to just try to prepare as much as possible for when the bosses will enter into their auras, which you can see now they are targeting all, which means that their next attack will be Blaze Wave, which will put them into their auras. Okay, so Behemoth A has used Blaze Wave, and in the early parts of the fight, because the boss's stats are not buffed yet from the Chaos mechanics, having 8000 Brave is still quite manageable, so you can see that I can still very comfortably shave off their Brave before their next turn. The best way with this party setup to break them is of course to use Relm Sketch Summon, which has a 50% chance to break. Now it may sound kinda RNG-ish, but because Relm has a lot of turn manipulation built into her kit, you actually get multiple tries of Sketch Summon to inflict the insta break. I did not use Sketch Summon here because after using Blaze Wave, the bosses didn't have too much Brave and I can still shave them after. And I decided to save Realm Sketch Summon for the later parts of the fight, where I know the bosses will gain a significantly higher Brave amount. So the key here in short is to really try to save Realm Sketch Summon ability for when you really need it for the insta break attacks on the behemoths. I decided to use one hyperdrive here mainly to charge Kefka's EX meter because there wasn't many debuffs to worry about enframing, and it will still leave enough room for the Emperor to land debuffs after. Okay, so Behemoth A has used Seraphos, and you can see it now has 52,000 Brave. And during each of your character's turn, it will absorb about 15,000 Brave, as you see what it did to my Relm here. This makes it extremely challenging to break it because it also gains a Brave damage resistance. And this is really the time to start using Realm Sketch Summon. So unfortunately, the first time I did that, it failed to break, so the 50% didn't trigger. And now Behemoth B have also used Seraphos. So I tried using Sketch Summon again with Relm. She got a free turn from the Sketch mechanic. And the second time she used this, the Insta Break came through. So this is really a prime example of saving Relm's Sketch Summon and using it for the Insta Break. And like I said earlier, even if the first time or even the second time it doesn't insta break, you should have more than one or even more than two tries to use it before the bosses get their next turn in, so you don't really have to worry too much. I save my summon as an emergency button, so in the circumstance where I'm so unlucky that even after trying Sketch Summon a few times the insta break doesn't come through, I can still rest assured that I can pop my summon and get a few more turns of tries in to break off the enemies and remove them from their brave resistance aura. Okay, so Behemoth B is below 50% health, and really at this point I started to switch over to Behemoth A, and at this point I'm also preparing to use Kefka's burst. One reason is Kefka's burst will end giving him a burst effect, which will increase the HP damage dealt, very similar to Charlotta's EX ability. And obviously, to fully maximize that bonus HP damage, it's best to use Kefka's burst before your summon so that your damage done inside summon is boosted even further. If you are able to launch enemies, it's best to try to launch them when you have 2 follow-up attacks, and if possible, try to launch them with Relm, because Relm's abilities also have an inbuilt party battery to it, so using Relm to launch will allow you to do follow-up attacks with your other 2 party members with significant HP damage. Okay, so Behemoth A is also now below 50% health, and this is where I decided to use Kefka's burst because I will soon be going into EX mode. Again, because the Behemoths are not heavily debuffed with Emperor's traps, you do not want to enframe all of Kefka's debuffs. So I made sure that he has one charge of his Meteor Plus before I entered burst mode, so that I could use Meteor Plus here to do some nice HP damage, do Havoc Wing, and then get another Meteor Plus to use again. Therefore, I can still do nice damage inside Kefka's burst without using his LD inside the burst mode. Okay, so I've got a very nice burst effect and significant damage done inside the burst mode. Both Behemoths at this point are in the red, and very soon I will be popping my summon. At this point, I still have quite a lot of Realms cash summon. I was really saving them for when I need to break the enemies. But since I got this far and she still has like 5 more skill users, I decided to be a bit more liberal with the skill users to end the fight a little bit more quicker. So Empress EX is ready, and since the Behemoth A is about to get a turn, this is when I decided to pop my summon because I was worried that Behemoth A might use Seraphos, which will make it a little bit more tricky to deal. So popped my summon and landed Emperor's EX. So at this point, I can go to town with Kefka's Hyperdrive. Not only does it deal nice damage because he's inside summon mode and his max brave is increased, I also have his burst effect on. So you can see it does cap damage on both behemoths, and I don't have to worry about removing Emperor's traps. So this is really the best time to be using all of Kefka's remaining LD users. And with Emperor, obviously you want to use his HP+++ because that will lead to a triple track trigger dealing significant HP damage, as well as a nice turn delay from the Jury Cell trap. Okay, so again, a few more turns in because the bosses were delayed by Jury Cell, and allows me to again trigger all 3 traps with Emperor's HP+++, and at this point I could very comfortably finish the bosses off before they get their next turn. The fight is still very easily doable without Kefka's burst, and you can see that I still have some spare users of Relm's Cash Summon here. So even without Kefka's burst, you can just need to save Relm's Cash Summon to break the enemies when they're in the aura state. But that's it. As always, if you enjoyed the video, do leave a like, leave a comment or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you in the next Chaos fight. Bye bye.